Never wanted this. I never wanted to unleash my legions. And together we banished the ignorance of all the night. But you betrayed. You betrayed us all. You stole power from the gods and lied to your sons. Mankind has only one chance to prosper. If you will not seize it, then I will. So let it be war. From the skies of Terra to the galactic rim, let the seas boil, let the stars fall. Though it takes the last drop of my blood, I will see the galaxy freed once more. And if I cannot save it from your failure, Father, then let the galaxy burn. War Master Horus. Hey friends, it's me, the annoyed with her hair Ebony Otaku, the well-rounded nerd. So I had a video to go up today, and apparently the sound did not record. And that video was a revisiting of some of the 30K lore in general, not just specific Primarchs and whatever. Because with the refresh of the rules, it's a good time for those who are not as familiar with Warhammer to get some familiarization with the lore. Warhammer 30K takes place during this universe in a time called the Horus Heresy, which the Emperor of Mankind, that we're going to read about here in a second, created his 2018 gene sons and used them as gene patriarchs of legions of space marines to conquer the known galaxy and bring all the humans that are scattered across the galaxy back under one umbrella that is the Imperium of Mankind. Yeah, it's real manifest destiny. With that, though, not all of the Emperor's gene sons will end up agreeing with him. Some will end up being loyalists, and those are the loyal legions to the Emperor. Some will end up being heretics or traitor legions, which Horus leads those. Horus was the favored son out of all of them. He was the wall master. The Emperor left him in charge of all of the other legions, and then Horus turns heretic. So for those who are coming into 30K right now with the refresh of the rules, it's a good time because with this rule refresh, things are a little higgledy-piggledy right now, but it's a good time to get in because everyone's kind of having to restart. I'm rebuilding my army list. It's a good time. So the video I intended to have happen today is still going to happen. I'm just going to do it live instead of recording it. Y'all want to read some lore? We're going to read some lore. By the way, these are the boxes that just came out. Don't come for me, Black Library. I love you so much. But these are the new models that came out, the Saturnine. This is the box that everyone's working on right now. I just got my Champions of Slaanesh built, and next is my Saturnine box. But this is the big release that has everyone just up in arms. So with these books, you don't just get the rules of the game, you also get a lot of lore. And that's what we're going to look at is the lore. So let's just start. We're going to do this like 5th grade style, 4th grade style. Look at that. That's the Emperor of Mankind. I know he thinks he's something with his flaming sword. Will I ever be able to paint a sword to look like that? Probably not. But we'll admire it here. Shall we? Yes, we shall. The age of the Emperor. To understand the tragedy of the Horus Heresy, it is first vital to understand what came before it. Both the shifting, tenebrous millennia of strife and the 2 brief shining centuries in which the Emperor walked amongst his subjects and dispelled darkness. The Emperor wasn't always awful. He just became awful. Ooh, this is the knight I just built. A Knight Lancer. Isn't he beautiful? Anywho. So, let's start with Old Earth, shall we? Old Earth. 300 centuries ago, mankind first left the polluted, used-up carcass of old Earth, left for the unknown bounties and perils beyond the skies of our birth world. In those forgotten early years, it is unknown what enemies and trials humanity overcame in our uncaring universe to not only survive, but thrive and forge a domain amongst the stars. Colonies spread across our galaxy so that humanity was scattered across a million worlds and found treasures and horrors uncounted. Mankind's mastery ascended to an almost unimaginable zenith, and at its heart lay a resurgent Earth. The promised wonders of our species' earliest ambitions were made manifest, and our application and control of the sciences was unparalleled. Humanity reached its pinnacle, raised up by the miracles of technology which it wrought, reshaping uncounted worlds in the vision of distant old Earth. The legends which remain of that lost realm of ancient human empires speak of a galaxy of plenty, filled with opportunity, culture, technological progress, and wonder. Then came the dark age of technology. In the heights of those times, lost to all but supposition and myth, humanity made itself as unto gods, able to harness the power of the stars and fashion servants from clay and iron and give them counterfeit life to do their bidding. Unfortunately, this era of advancement was not to last, for mankind fell prey to its own sciences. Mankind's golden age failed, wherein the promised wisdom of science and technology did not elevate mankind to the divine, but rather smote it for the consequences of its reckless excess and ambitions, untempered by reason. Martian Terran wars of terrible destruction ensued, and the beautiful animate tools which mankind had created and so coveted were corrupted and turned upon all humanity. Horrors were perpetrated to possess meager resources, all but depleted from their earlier age of prosperity. And greed and hubris saw fearsome ancient weapons unleash that risked our species' very annihilation. Such were the terrors of this time, that death could not cross the vast distances of space, coming unexpected and uninvited to consume entire worlds. This was the dark age of technology, and for millennia, it reigned. Hey, friends. Welcome. Oh, hey, Jacob. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. So we're looking at the lore of Warhammer with the refresh in the rules. I believe for 30K. Don't quote me because I'm new to playing 30K. I've only been doing it for about a year. But I think we're on rules 3.0. 40K, they're wherever they are. I have no idea because I don't play 40K. But 30K players in the world Warhammer gaming arena are unique in that we tend to play more narrative-driven games. So if you go to a 30K tournament or meet other 30K players, they are playing the story of the Horus Heresy and different battles on different planets with different personas that impacted the outcome of all of these worlds that started with the Emperor. We're going to get to the Emperor eventually. But at one point, humans, apparently around our time, because we are 30,000 years in the past compared to 30K, we destroyed the planet. I mean, I can't see that happening. Us destroy the planet? Absolutely not. Why would we do that? No. But at some point, we destroy the planet and we leave. And humans do what humans do. Initially, according to the 30K lore that we just read, initially humans leave the planet and all is well. There's actually an age of prosperity. We're getting along. We're conquering worlds. Everything's good until, because humans are going to human, there be problems. And those problems come from where all human problems come from. What, you've got more than me? Well, then I need that so that I have more than you. That is war summed up in a very elementary sentence. How dare you have more than me? I must have more than thee. Let us fight about it. But eventually along comes the Emperor to settle all of this. And we'll get into that. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But there's a lot happening in the 30K background that makes the lore so rich and wonderful that attracts 30K players. So I'm doing this video, and there's a little bit of series of reading into the lore that's in the rule books, so that if you're new to it, you know what you're getting into, and that when you show up to a 30K event and everybody's debating on whether or not Lorgar was right, he is, or whether or not Fulgrim should be pitied, he should, or whether or not Rabute is the goat, he is. You'll know what they're talking about. So even if you're not ready to go purchase a $300 box of plastic, you can still go pick up the rule book and get into the lore and start getting into the books. I would highly recommend picking up Horus Rising. That's where the lore starts. So if you're one who likes to read, go forth and read. If that's not your thing, well, you can listen to me read or go find other resources. But that is the lore that we're getting into. So let's talk about, well, not talk about, we're going to read about the Age of Strife, shall we? Yes, we shall. The Age of Strife. Mankind's first empire would fall into bloody ruin, isolation, and ignorance. The terrible period of history that followed is officially named the Age of Strife, although it has another name, whispered only fearfully: Old Night. During the darkness of Old Night, humanity experienced naught but nightmare and predation for over 5,000 years. During this time, the worlds of mankind were isolated by searing warp storms that made interstellar travel virtually impossible, and ancient Terra was totally cut off from its colonies and allies. Across the galaxy, human worlds bereft of central authority or protection, and the web of support and supply that had maintained the threads of civilization fell into anarchy and war. Human civilization was torn apart as local factions and new empires fought for control in the shattered realm, while others, utterly cut off from aid, succumbed to the horrors of planet-wide famine, insanity, and worse, the perils of the warp. The existence of warp creatures and the dangers they pose to the human mind were barely understood. On worlds with large concentrations of emergent psychers, the entities from beyond were able to breach the barrier between the immaterium and corporal reality, and it cannot be known or guessed how many worlds were ravaged or swallowed whole by their incursions. As human civilizations fragmented, hundreds of Xenos races and enemies unknown seized their chance for revenge on humanity for its past conquest, or to plunder unprotected worlds and enslave their populations. Hundreds more human inhabited star systems were sacked and ravaged, their peoples slaughtered, mutilated, or abducted. Those that survived the alien onslaught rapidly reverted to barbarism, stripped of civilization, knowledge, and culture, in the raw battle to endure. Humanity stood on the brink of total extinction, and endless night gathered round its children. Alone and beset by internal strife, famine, and plague, under incessant attack by aliens and facing the horrors of the warp incursions, the human worlds that survived were pitiable shadows of what they had once been. It was to become an age when mankind's dead far outnumbered its living. Shorn of its galactic empire, ancient Terra could not sustain itself. Protracted intersign wars emptied old Earth's terrible arsenals of radiological weaponry, killing untold billions, destroying its ancient power structures, and boiling off the last of its oceans. In their aftermath, the planet became a lawless battleground, little more than a blasted desert dotted with ruins, its people reduced to the level of brute savages fighting over the scarce water and untainted land which remained. Old Earth expired entirely, all of its ancient knowledge lost and its cities torn down, and where it once stood, instead reigned a world of savagery and horror, the equal of any brought to ruin in the Age of Strife. Long before, left perilous and polluted, Generations of war-made terror and wasteland, punctuated by fortified holdfasts, built amid wreckage of lost civilizations, and its inhabitants a mass of degenerate feral nomads, insane prophets, cyber-augmented butcher kings, vivisector warlords, and religious demagogues led the warring tribes of ancient Earth, and the world was racked by incessant conflict as one tyrant displaced another. Petty empires rose and disintegrated. Tribes formed, were destroyed, and reformed as diminishing, brutalized shadows of lost glories and forgotten triumphs. Uncounted billions died, unknown and unremembered, while the whispered names, such as the unspeakable king and the seven neverborn, left legends to terrify generations to come. Anarchy and bloodshed was lord over all. For those few with time enough to spare thought to such matters, it would have seemed as if there were no hope and no help. The end times were at hand, and a slow, bitter descent into destruction was all that any could see as humanity's future. Many succumbed to despair, believing no force imaginable could save mankind and free it from its hellish bondage. But they would be proved wrong. Bing, turn the page. So, for those who are just joining, I'm reading from the lore of our new Horus Heresy, she can't talk, Horus Heresy Age of Darkness rulebook. So the rule books are great, not just because you've got all the rules to play the game and all these great, wonderful images that are in here. The next one is on Unification Wars. Is that not glorious? Yes, it is. Praise the art. It also has a lot of lore in there. So as I stated at the beginning of the video, and I think in the middle as well, a lot of what happens in 30K games is based on the lore of 30K, and the games become way more enjoyable if you're into the lore. Now, if you want to show up and play, go right ahead. And y'all, OPR exists. We do not besmirch OPR on this channel. Yes, I know, poor doggy. My dog is whining because he just got a walk and treats, and he's suffering. Are you suffering? Yeah, tell me how you suffer. He's suffering in his bed with his toys. Poor thing. Anywho, but if you get into playing the games, I would highly advise getting into the lore. Now, there are 9,000 Horus Heresy books. Like, there's a bunch of them. You can start with Horus Rising and work your way through. I've been reading them for 20 years now. So, it's a tall order. Like, we're talking One Piece levels of lore that is available in book form for the Horus Heresy. But to quickly get up on the lore, this is your best bet, is to read the rule books, which is what I'm doing with the rule refresh. I thought, why not? That was the video that was supposed to come out today. And for some reason, the sound didn't record. So that's why I'm just reading it live, so I can still have my Warhammer Wednesday. So in that particular video, I read up until, I believe, the Unification Wars. So I don't want to go too far into it. But just, for those who are new into Warhammer, I am going to be doing a little bit more reading into the lore, especially going into October soon, because what's more horrifying than a future filled with war? But I didn't want Wednesday to pass without a video, because that's what I do every Wednesday. I do some kind of Warhammer video. But while we're here, I did have a request from a viewer to take a look at a particular Primarch. So I'm going to flip over to those pages and we'll pick up on the more in-depth lore. But let's read of this particular Primarch. One second. I'm going to flip on over. That's what happens when you do things live and unplanned. My recorded video was so great. It was so profound. And no sound. So, oh well. I believe they wanted to hear, nope, it wasn't Angron. It wasn't Ferrus Manus. Was it the... Who was it? Nope, not Ferrus Manus. We do love the Gorgon. Sanguinius the Angel, we love him too. I have not made it to Courage yet. He's crazy. Even Russ, no, not the Con, not the Perturabo. And within Emperor's Children. Nope. Who did he want me to do? Was it the Dark Angels? Can't remember. I think not Lionel Johnson. I don't know a lot about Lionel Johnson. I feel like I should. I'm a little ashamed of that. I don't know everything about every Primarch. I know about the Primarchs I care about, which that's just how it is with anything. Flipping, because I'm here and I might as well read. I've already done the Word Bearers. I've done Horus Lupercal. Was it Magnus the Red that he wanted? Was it Thousand Sons? I love Alive. Don't you love Alive? It's just so unplanned and unfettered. Flip. Not Alpharius Omegon. We'll talk about him later. Raven God. I think it actually was. Yes, I do believe it was the Thousand Sons. But don't you love a spine crack? Let's just read about the Thousand Sons. So I'm doing this specifically because a viewer asked, and I read up to the lore that would have been in today's video. But you know what? We got a few more minutes. Let's read about Magnus the Red and the Thousand Sons. The 15th Legion, shall we? Oh, by the way, here he is. Look at him. Look at him. Just, yeah, that's a fashion choice. He hangs out with a certain type of crowd. We don't judge. We listen and we don't judge. Out loud. All right. Thousand Sons. This is for you, loyal viewer, who said you wanted me to get to the Thousand Sons. So, the 15th Legion is Astartes. Thousand Sons. Reading voice. Betrayal is a child of many sires. Power, hate, vengeance, shame, guilt, bitterness, viciousness, callousness, all have played their part in the fall of those who turned on the emperor. But to this list, two more must be added: hubris and blindness. While other legions walked into infamy at their own choosing, the Thousand Sons were plunged into the state, first by their own pride, second by the treachery of those they trusted, and third by the Imperium itself. The Thousand Sons were a space marine legion bound up with occult lore, mysticism, and the otherworldly powers of the Psyker. It was these esoteric arts of war that made it one of the most formidable legions, but also one of the most distrusted, and would eventually see it subject to the Emperor's judgment. And tainted by mutation and touched by the warp, the fall of the Thousand Sons seemed certain in retrospect. But that certainty is false. Another path might have waited for the 15th Legion, had fate not been so cruel. As it is, the story of the Thousand Sons is not of a darkness, but of a light that drew a legion and Primarch higher and higher until they could no longer see the boundaries of obedience left far below them. So when you're getting into the lore of Warhammer, Games Workshop was very clever in the way that they have set up their tabletop game. There are options of 18 legions to choose from. All of those legions have a Primarch. One of those Primarchs that I'm reading about right now is this guy right here, Magnus the Spiky Chested Primarch of the Thousand Sons, Magnus the Red. But he's got, 17 brothers. There should be 20, but for reasons, there's 18. And with that, what Games Workshop did was with these legions, there are certain traits that each Primarch has inherited from humanity. So when people are building their armies, a lot of us gravitate towards the Primarch and the army that we recognize traits within ourselves. People who tend to perhaps really care about arts. Like I'm an artsy fartsy person, obviously. I really love The Emperor's Children because Fulgrim, one of the reasons I rock with Fulgrim so much is he says in his book, in his Primarch book, Fulgrim, that if we're not fighting for the beauty of what humanity's created, if we're not fighting for all of this awesomeness that is humans, then what are we even out here in the stars doing? What's even the point of what we're doing if we're not fighting for the beauty that's humanity? So that's why I choose the Emperor's Children as my army. There are some who are really into, one of the people we paint with, they're really into the Alpha Legion. The Alpha Legion is a legion of secrecy. They are the legion of subterfuge. They are a legion of very all the legions are rigid, but they're extra rigid in the Alpha Legion to the point that you can't tell the Primarch from his sons. Like they are uniform to the point of being able to sub out for one another. You could be talking to the Primarch, you could be talking to a foot soldier. You'll never know unless they want you to, and even then they still probably lied. Was it Alfarius? Was it Omegon? Was it somebody else? Who knows? So everyone can find a legion that appeals to them. And I have been reading through all the Primarchs as well. But again, if you're new to playing the game, the rule refresh is a great time to do it. And then also get into these books and read the lore so that when you show up at events, you can have a better idea of one, what's the army that speaks to you? And then also, as you get into these narrative driven events, you'll have an idea of why everyone's so excited and why we're all debating about why Fulgrim did nothing wrong. So let's read about the Primarch before we get into the Legion. So the Primarch, Magnus the Red, reading voice. The Legion's homeworld of Prospero was a polished jewel glittering alone in the long dark of night. While many worlds which had cradled the lost Primarchs, it seemed were often unremittingly soaked in darkness, cruelty, and blood, Prospero had achieved an ascendancy over such barbarity. This was the place where the Primarch of Magnus the Red came to settle within Tizca, the City of Light, and citadel of reason on Prospero. There he absorbed the lessons of the city's masters and soon exceeded their skill in every area of psychic discipline, scholarship, and endeavor. Tizca flowered as never before under Magnus, the Crimson King of its empire of dreams. Magnus was the tallest of the Primarch siblings, a giant with reddish skin and possessing only one eye. He was erudite and considered in his manner and rhetoric, earning a reputation for wisdom among his brothers. He was also an extremely potent psyker, second only to the Emperor in power. Magnus reunited with his legion at the critical moment as it was overcome by the flesh change. Only his vast intellect and power as a psyker allowed him to save his legion from certain doom. He turned all of his power, lore, and learning to discovering a way to lift the curse which was killing his sons. And though he was successful, his cure came at a great cost, and the legion was forever changed by his hand. The Magnus and Lorgar are very unique amongst the Primarchs in that they were raised on worlds where psychic abilities were not taboo. They were encouraged, they grew in them. So when the Emperor shows up eventually, and we'll get there, and says, "You're not supposed to do that," they go, "But I've been doing it for 500 years and it was cool." And haven't you been doing this as well, Sir Emperor? We'll talk about him later. Let's read about the Legion. So the primogenitor is Magnus the Red. And it observes strategic tendencies, psychic warfare, precision assaults, misdirection, lore culling, macro coordination, multi-theater campaigns. Their domain is Prospera, and they are a traitor legion. They do end up turning against the Emperor. There is actually a book within the Horus Heresy series called Prospero Burns. Guess what that book's about? So, signs and portents. The 15th Legion was among the last in a line of the creation of Legiones Astartes. The conquest of Terra was already complete. Luna had fallen, and the firstborn legions had started to bring the rest of the Sol system to heel. It was a time of transition, a time of endings as well as beginnings. And into this time, the 15th Legion were born. Strange portents and ill omens surrounded the creation of the Legion. Its aspirants would be free from flaw, drawn to the Archmind Empire, the enclaves of the Fire Lords of Aus, and the Kashai domain on Terra, realms known for the ability and ancient purity of their bloodlines. In the first years of the Great Crusade, the reputation and strength of the Legion grew at an accelerated pace. It reaped multiple victories and often fought alongside brother legionaries, being held high in esteem by even the Sabbath 6th Legion and iconoclasts of the 13th Legions. A decade after the Great Crusade spilled beyond Seoul, the first of the Thousand Sons began to openly manifest potent psychic abilities. These, it is thought, were the result of an aberration in their gene seed, which heightened psychic ability and unlocked even latent sensitivities to the warp. These abilities would further shape the Legion, giving rise to some of its most notable warriors, but also introducing instability and mutation into its ranks in the form of the so called flesh change. This horrific and fatally degenerative mutation was triggered by loss of control while channeling psychic power and afflicted the Legion in great numbers until its rising strength of tens of thousands was reduced to a mere 1,000 legionaries. The flesh change was a closely guarded secret of the Thousand Sons, and though mutation was far from uncommon in the galaxy, its link to the rising psychic powers of the Legion did not go unnoticed. The condemnations and calls for the Legion to be expunged for its impurity grew in intensity and strength as the Thousand Sons withered. Fate, however, had different plans for the Legion. So this is not unlike the story of Fulgrim and the Third Legion. They had a blight amongst them as well that was creating imperfect sons, so we shall say. And where Fulgrim was not a great psychic, he actually had to rely on his apothecary, Fabius Bile. His last name's Bile, and we didn't know he was evil. Anyhow, um, he had to rely on Fabius Bile in his research to save his legion. Magnus was able to do it himself, but he did it with psychic powers. And as we continue to read in the rulebook and the lore of the Horus Heresy, we find that the Emperor basically banishes humans from engaging in psychic practice. He knows what it is. He's all up in there. but these are rules for thee and not for me, as far as the Emperor is concerned. He can play in the warp and with psychic powers. You absolutely not. And when he encounters Lorgar and Magnus the Red at some point, as he's recovering his sons, he realizes he has sons who have already been thoroughly exposed to the warp, are fully awakened psychics, and they know there are dark gods out there. And then we see eventually how the Emperor makes his mistake, because rather than making these sons more loyal to him, he breeds fear of their powers into them. He doesn't explain to everyone, hey, this is what the warp is. This is why you don't tamper with the warp. This is why we stay away from the warp. He goes, no, just don't do it because I said so. Because I'm your dad who threw you out into the warp. Yeah, I believe the Emperor threw him out there on purpose. Come for me. Comment wars. But I am the Emperor. I threw them out there. But I had no intention of you actually becoming psychic. Okay, Emperor. A psychic brotherhood. In the remaking of the Legion, Magnus created the Prosperine cults. There's a word. Each cult specialized in a single strand of psychic power, and every psyker manifest power within the Legion belonged to a cult which mirrored their foremost ability. This is why this matters. If you choose to play this game, your armies are going to imitate the powers that are within the Legion. I play Emperor's Children primarily. I got a whole lot of weirdness going on in my Legion because they are loyal to Slaanesh, and Slaanesh is a god of, what's the word, excess. Excess and pleasure is what Slaanesh is all about, and those mutations show up in the powers of the Emperor's Children. They are all about perfection as well. They choose to sword fight instead of shoot if they have that option, because they believe it to be more elegant and more beautiful. So I have an army that's really leaning towards melee. Like, if I'm far away, you probably won't take me out if you roll right, but if I get up close to you, you're done. So that's what you have to look at when you're reading about the lore of these different legions, is what kind of powers you want to use. And then when you're actually playing these tabletop games, those powers interplay against one another in unique ways. And that's why you have to learn your army. When I first started playing, just over a year ago, I made the mistake of thinking, ew, I'm gonna have an Emperor Children army. I'm gonna have a Salamanders army. I'm gonna have a Ultramarines. No, you gonna have one army. Because there's so much to learn about one army. Read through the Primarchs, read some lore, get the rule book, figure out the one that you like the best. Shall we continue? Yes, we shall. The Pavoni concerned themselves with the interaction of the etheric and living flesh. Biomancers, they were flesh shapers and remakers, and their initiates could channel the power of the warp to harden their flesh against damage, boil the blood of their enemies, and even to heal the flesh and bones of their own bodies. These are real handy to have in your army because they can basically bring you back if you have the right models. Deeply connected to the process of life, the Pavoni were often said to hold the heart and passions of the legion, and in matters of doctrine, oratory, and belief, their adepts often dominated. The Raptora were masters of bending physical reality to their will, employing psychokinesis to control fundamental forces such as gravity. They could conjure shields of invisible energy, crush metal with their minds, and summon storms of debris to flay their foes. Many of the Raptora were also amongst the Legion's most gifted theoreticians and scholars, noted for their coldness and cleanness of their reasoning and their logic. The Corvidae were the soothsayers and augurs who bent their abilities to touch the flow of time and consequence, perhaps the most subtle of all the cults. It was said by their fellows that the Corvidae could read the past in a dying man's breath, could glimpse the far distant possibilities, and even manipulate the flow of one second to another by the force of their minds alone. The mark of the Corvidae was also the mark of the Legion's greatest strategists and generals. And it is no coincidence that Ahriman, chief librarian of the Thousand Sons, and foremost of its leaders in the dawning of the Horus Heresy, was Magister Templi of the Corvidae. So, as you're looking to these different legions to figure out which one you want, this lore comes in handy because what kind of army do you want? Do you want a melee army like mine? Do you want a shooty army? Do you want to play Xenos? You know, you can obviously play Necrons. Wait, 30k, hold up. 30k, not 40k. There are no orcs in 30k. You can't play orcs. I forgot about that. You can play Eldar though. Do you want to play one of the legions? Do you want to be Imperial Guard and just be regular humans? Those are all options, but you got to read about them to know which one you want. Let's wrap it up with the Thousand Sons because it's getting late, y'all, and I do have to work in the morning. I had to read the Thousand. You know what? Why I had to read the Thousand Sons? It was meant to be because I'm about to do this Fulgrim apology video for the contest to get something either out of my collection or a custom print that I paint. Go and vote in that poll. It's on my channel. Like, I want to do my 5,000 subscriber giveaway. Just want to know which one y'all prefer. One piece of ridiculousness or a custom piece of ridiculousness. I get to choose either way. But the blade that poisons Horus is the Thousand Sons' fault, basically. So let's talk about it. These words, Black Library, anyway. The Athenians' secrets were bound to the workings and manipulations of the mind and thought. Both subtle and powerful telepaths, they held the legion together in battle, channeling orders and intent seamlessly into the minds of its warriors, forming a communication network unbreakable and unparalleled in scope. Because of this, it often seemed not an army of individuals, but of machines driven by a single indomitable will. Outside of the clamor of battle, many of the cult were given to aestheticism and withdrawn contemplation, a consequence of their contact with the thoughts of others, perhaps. They were often also used as emissaries to other regions and factions of the wider Imperium. The Pyres abilities express themselves in terrifying manner. The control and creation of fire. Their thoughts could become hailstorms, burning as bright as a star's fury, and their touch could reduce metal to slag in mere moments. The most bellicose of all the cults, the Pyre excelled in destruction, and their smoldering pride beat with the heat of the Legion's martial heart. So, if you're building this army, this is a great set of models to have if you can get a hold of some Pyre, because they literally blow fire from across the field. I have a similar set of soldiers. They are called Cacophony, and they can scream at you from across the battlefield and make your head explode. It's great. It's a good time. As well as relying on their formidable psychic gifts, the Legion was still a thoroughly drilled and trained body of Space Marine warriors, possessing the finest equipment and armored support, and excelling in almost every aspect of conventional warfare. When combined with their etheric ability, the Legion was as terrifying weapon indeed. In addition to the core structures of the Legion, there were orders which existed both within and beyond its circumference, known by the symbols of the poised serpent. The Order of Ruin were a sect of mystics said to be obsessed with numerology and the hidden structure of the universe. The Order of the Jackal had a presence on every other structured faction of the Thousand Sons, including the other orders. The role of this small order was twofold: to remember the dead and to raise the next generation of warriors for the Legion. It is only by exploration and the interpretations of scraps of intelligence that the wider Imperium knows of the existence of the Third Order, the Order of Blindness. Thought to have been headed by Magnus's equerry, the former tutor Amon. The so-called Hidden Ones appear to have been an order of infiltrators, spies, interrogators, and scouts deployed to gather intelligence. Not unlike what's in Horus's own Legion, the Sons of Horus, they have the lodges. So it turns out that as you read through the Horus books, like every Legion before the heresy actually takes place had factions within it that already could have lent themselves to chaos. The Emperor just could have, handled it better. After the use of psychic powers by the legions was forbidden by the Edict of Nike, Magnus and his thousand sons withdrew to their home world, ostensibly chastised by the emperor. There, Magnus, via psychic means, discerned the danger Horus posed to the emperor and the fledgling Imperium and tried to warn the master of mankind. As events transpired, the warning failed and only contributed to the War Master exploiting the opportunity of the Space Wolves and censure of Magnus the Red to eliminate the rival in the Thousand Sons. The Legion's future would be defined by the cataclysmic battle for Prospero. It's really sad what happens to the Thousand Sons. So with his psychic ability, Magnus is actually quite loyal to the Emperor. All of his sons at one point are loyal. But he literally tries to reach out and make a psychic connection directly to the Emperor through the warp to tell him that Horus has turned. But at the Council of Nike, the Emperor had censured another son, Lorgar, for his use of psychic powers and used that event with all of his sons together to warn the rest of them, y'all don't do psychic stuff. So Lorgar gets sent home with his tail between the legs and everyone else gets warned. But it's one of those things where do the ends justify the means? And Magnus believed that the ends justified the means. He knew that Horus was turning. He was aware of him being stabbed with the anathema. He was aware of the infiltration of Erebus, and he tried to warn the Emperor. But if you go through the lore, you'll find that the Emperor refused to believe anything bad about Horus until he saw Horus take the life of another favorite son. Then he believed him when it happened right in front of him. Ain't that a thing? Y'all know y'all got that. I mean, y'all got that sibling who can do no wrong. Even when they do wrong, your parents won't believe them. Yeah, Emperor. Bad parenting. That's the Horus heresy in a nutshell. Bad parenting. from the Emperor. But this is a fun little dive into lore. It's not as poised and polished as the video that I had planned to be up, but I didn't want to let Warhammer Wednesday pass without getting into some of the lore. Next week's video, hopefully the sound did record, and we'll be continuing in the lore towards the front of the book and looking at how the legions were formed, what happens after Old Earth, and why Mars is allowed to, worship the machine spirit when nobody else is allowed to have a god. So that'll be what the next Warhammer video gets into. If not, I'll fix it in real time. So I hope this was entertaining for all of you. I always enjoy doing live readings. People seem to enjoy them. One of the reasons I don't just read straight through is this is copyright material. And reading, there's a little bit more leeway than there is with, clips and that kind of thing, and using audio and stuff. But I still want to make sure I respect the authors of this material. I don't just want to read the whole thing to you. Please go be a part of the community. Find yourself some folks to 30K with and get into the lore and get into the books. All right. I have to work in the morning. I don't know about y'all, so it's time for bed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.